Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. I have a question for you. Which do you think is better? To be in control of our lives or to be in alignment with our lives? You can probably guess which way I'm leaning, but I don't think it's a black and white answer initially. What I mean is, when life isn't going well or the way we want, we may want to change things. We may want to control things. For example, I think for a lot of us, doing a job that we loved would be great, but that isn't always the way life goes. So we try to get in control of life and say, I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this better. I know if I had a different boss, my life would be better. Or if I'm able to generate more income from my job, my life is definitely going to be better. So we try to control these things. And I think control really kicks in when there's a desire or a fear behind it. For example, let's say we grew up in a very impoverished environment, and we didn't like it that our parents struggled. It was hard, and sometimes other people made fun of us because they had a lot more than we did. And the way we may try to control this is earn as much money as we can, perhaps through getting a professional degree or working really hard in order to amass a lot of money. I think a lot of people do this. They want to be in control of their destiny because they weren't as a kid. And so they just choose things that they think will ultimately make them happy. But really, at its core, alignment isn't about being in control. It's about flowing with who you are. Now, there's nothing wrong with trying to get a job that pays well, or at least pays the bills. But wouldn't it be far better to do a job that could cover our expenses, that we loved, that was in alignment with our passions, versus just doing it because we think if we made enough money, all would be well? Or let's use a completely different example. Let's say we're living alone, we don't have a mate in our lives, and we want one because we don't like being alone. We don't like going to restaurants just with our friends or having to go to movies by ourselves all the time. We'd rather go with our mate. So we want to be in control. We want to find someone that can be with us and spend time with us. We don't want to be single. We want to control our destiny. So we get out there, start dating people, and we meet someone. And it looks okay. We give it a try. And now we're in control because now we can have someone to go to dinners with and someone that we can go to movies with and perhaps even create a family with. But are we in harmony? Are we in sync with who they are? Or are we just settling for who they are because we want to be in control and we don't want to be alone? So in this situation, though it's okay to want to find a mate, alignment is more about finding someone that we flow well with, that it's really overall a really good picture. Of course, there's bumps in every relationship, but overall, there's just a lot of good there. And we align with them, our hearts flow with them, and we find that they improve our lives instead of tearing us down, or really just meeting our needs of not wanting to be alone. We find someone that we align with, and they add joy, pleasure, and even bliss to our lives, because we have so much in common with them and we're aligned with their hearts. This is a harder path because it takes work, it takes effort, whether it be our jobs, whether it be our soulmate, because life is not about being in control. Life is about being in alignment. When we're in alignment, life just flows better. It has far more of a feel of flowing with life instead of battling life. Let's say, for example, someone has a lot of pressure put on them from their family to get a professional degree so that they can use that degree from the university and get a good job. But they take the courses, say they choose business, or let's say they choose medicine, and they don't like the courses. They actually find them very difficult or not very interesting or challenging, and they just, every day that they go to class, they hate it. But then they get one class, say an art class or a music class, or something they're passionate about, and they love it. When they're there, they have so much energy, they don't get tired, and they can't wait to walk into that class. Well, their voice inside their head is saying, but you need to do something practical, because you have to pay bills someday. But their heart's saying, but I really like this. Maybe there's a way to make a living at this. And that's where the subtle art of alignment can really kick in. We ask ourselves, what fits better given what I know of myself, my interests, my passions, things that I do that give me energy and joy? What could I do in order to make a living at those things? Because I believe We can make a living out of anything. Recently, for my birthday, I went hot air ballooning. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. But the inquisitive person that I am, I talked to the men on the crew that were working the hot air balloon. I asked them about their lives, how they got into it, why they do it, and I always get the same response. Yes, there's challenges in anything that we do, but they do it because they love it. These men just love being up in the air, flying these balloons, and hearing the stillness of the morning. They were just so passionate about what they did, and even though there were parts of it that were hard, it flowed better. It was more in alignment with who they are. And it was an alignment for them for different reasons. The crew, for example, really liked the idea of doing this job that they loved, and then they were done before even lunchtime, so they had the rest of the day off. They really liked their schedule, and they liked what they did. It was in alignment with who they were. And yet the boss, the guy that actually was in charge, he too loved what he did. But for him, security, financial security, was more important. His father had started the balloon company, and he really liked doing it. And he did it all over the world, but he made a living having the hot air balloon business in order to support him and his family. So we can be in alignment in very many different ways. For me, for example, I love art. I love traveling the world and visiting the most beautiful museums and seeing the most exquisite art around the world. But if I were ever to think about becoming a painter, it just doesn't interest me. I have tried it, but it wasn't my calling. I prefer to look at the art more than to create it. That's more in alignment with who I am. So how do we find our alignment with the universe and our place in the universe? Well, let me start with a question to you. How would you find the alignment of a person that you didn't know? You probably would spend time with them. You'd ask them questions. You'd have them try different things out and see what worked with them and what didn't. And then you would encourage them to pursue their passions, correct? Well, it's the same way with ourselves. We have to spend time with ourselves, quiet time, where we listen to our heart. And then we explore. We try different things out. And we say, okay, yeah, this is good. I like this. And then we see if there's doors that can open up to those things that we like. Sometimes there aren't. I mean, think of a soulmate type example. We may fall in love with someone, but perhaps they don't reciprocate. Sometimes they do. And then we're in alignment. But if we try to control another person who doesn't want to be with us, then that may not be the best thing. So a lot of alignment has to do with listening. Just saying, how is this going? Is this giving me energy? Is this creating happiness in my heart? Or is this exhausting me because I'm doing something because I want to be in control, not because I want to be in alignment with the universe? Now, wanting to be in alignment with our lives is a beautiful goal, but it may take some time. We may be doing things that are completely out of alignment right now, and changing them overnight is really not possible. So what we do is we start making small changes. For example, I knew a teacher once who just really loved nature. And he said, I want to spend more time in nature. So instead of working during the summers, which he could do and make more money, he got jobs up in the national parks and worked there. And then during the school year, he started taking courses on forestry and park management because that's what he wanted to do. And then with time, it took a few years, but with time, he got his master's degree. He now was pretty well known in the Park Service. And guess what? He got a job and has been working there ever since and really loves it. Now, if we're not in alignment with our lives right now and have worked more on the being in control, and we've realized that that path hasn't worked, it's going to take some time to make changes. But we first need to discover, well, what am I in alignment with? And a lot of it is just listening. What gives us energy? What doesn't deplete us? What puts a smile on our heart instead of exhaust us? What do we feel is meaningful so that when we take our last breath of life, we'll say, that was a good life? Who are our friends and our people we're with that add to our life instead of taking away from our lives? There's so many ways we can be in alignment with life and stop needing to be in control. We just listen. And then when we listen, we say, oh yeah, that's the path I need to go down. And then we begin to go down that path. Now there will be bumps, of course, along the way, But if we are in alignment, we're going to find that we don't need to be in control. The doors will just open because we're pursuing something that aligns more with our hearts. And I believe when we align with our hearts, the whole universe conspires to help us. I really believe that. I think you'll find that to be true too. But there's another aspect to keep in mind about aligning with life, is that life changes. It continually presents us with different opportunities, new things that we can do, taking away things that we used to do. And that doesn't have to be bad, particularly if we're not trying to be in control. We just say, okay, I get it. I can't do that anymore. Let's say we were a long distance runner and now our knees say we're not doing that anymore. What can we do instead? Let's say we really enjoyed our job, but our job said, nope, can't do that anymore. It's time for you to retire. Then we say, okay, now what am I going to do? What will I align with in my free time? So much of life is not trying to control life, but to get in alignment with life. And we get in alignment with life by listening to our hearts and say, is this working for me, or do I need to try something different? And also realizing what we're in control of, because there are things we're in control of, but things that we're not in control of, and letting go of them. And also not always pushing so hard. If things just aren't working out in one arena, we go somewhere else and try something else. So much of life is flowing with life and not always fighting life. I know that things don't always work out the way that we want or that we expected. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's more like, okay, what new adventure is before me? And then a lot of this is about listening, saying, what works for me? What would I find joy in? What would I find pleasure in? What gives me energy instead of depletes energy inside me? And then we go down that path. And if we hit bumps along the way, we say, okay, is this something I need to stay on? Or is it perhaps time to redirect my attention somewhere else? So much of this, as I say, is listening. But when we listen, I really believe we'll find that life will flow better. And not only that, it's almost as if the whole universe conspires to help us when we're doing things for the sake of the joy of doing them instead of for some ulterior motive, like getting the approval of others or having a certain success rate or whatever it may be. When we just do it for the joy of doing it, I think we'll find that that alignment makes life go better, so much better, and that we find our lives can truly be a beautiful adventure, one day at a time, one breath at a time. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to happinesspodcast.org. And until next time, accept what is, love what is.